In the post-muscle car era, cars have to be more than just fast. They have to be street legal. Back when the muscle car was born, the name of the game was run what you brung and hope you brung enough. The door was wide open for manufacturers to do just about anything they wanted to make a car go faster. But in the early 70s, high performance gave way to the need for lower exhaust emissions. Getting these mega-powered engines to meet federal emission standards was difficult and expensive. So most automakers just stopped making fast cars. Even aftermarket hot rod parts had to be certified emissions-friendly. This was the new reality, and it brought with it the end of America's first muscle car era. That's the way things were for nearly 20 years, until a company called SLP Engineering reinvented the process of making horsepower. SLP stands for Street Legal Performance, and putting muscle back into GM's cars was their objective. But in this new high-tech world, this required a high-tech solution. Fortunately for muscle car fans, SLP is all about high-tech solutions.
There are always people who want more. I mean, that's pretty much the American way. And SLP stepped up just like the early guys did, Berger, Yinko, and all those guys. SLP is really the new tradition of aftermarket performance.
SLP Engineering launched into the high-performance arena in the mid-'80s with a new design induction and exhaust system for the General Motors 305 cubic inch small block engine. Made especially for the Firebird and Camaro, these street-legal bolt-on parts increased the 305's horsepower and torque by over 10%. This was the first ray of high-performance sunshine for F-body owners since the glory days of the early 70s. Most importantly, SLP's close relationship with General Motors took much of the guesswork out of building a faster Firebird. SLP parts were available through GM service departments. They could be dealer installed, and the cost of the modifications could even be financed in with the cost of the car purchase. In this new high-tech world, this was the way to go hot rodding.
One of the scary things about fuel injection and computer control is the average enthusiast thought that they couldn't modify them at all. The engines respond to the same things that the early engines do. You just have to go about it in a slightly different way. SLP showed everyone it could be done.
Today, SLP has evolved into a supercar builder, making turnkey hot rods for people who want that old muscle car punch to go along with the looks and the handling of today's cars. In their new high-tech manufacturing facilities, Camaros become SLP Camaro Super Sports, and Firebirds become SLP Firehawks, in a process that upgrades every part of the car.
What we're trying to do is provide high performance, reliability, unique styling, performance, and handling that the average enthusiast can afford.
Along with the drivetrain and suspension enhancements, aerodynamic body parts and free-flowing intake and exhaust complete the SLP treatment, turning GM's hot F-body cars into thrill machines that actually outperform the legendary 60s muscle cars. In addition to the Camaro SS and the Firehawk, SLP creates special versions of the Pontiac Grand Prix, a V6-powered Camaro RS, and 2 sport trucks based on the GMC Express and the Chevy Seeker. To those who said you couldn't get performance out of emissions-legal engines, the cars from SLP are a revelation. And for those who never experienced a real 60s ground pounder, these new Millennium muscle cars are a chance to have the kind of horsepower under their foot they'd only heard about in bench racing sessions. All of this happened, and is happening today, because a group of people, led by an old hot rodder named Ed Hamburger, believed the muscle car era wasn't dead.
Ed's got a long tradition of motorsports. He was a racer back in the 60s, 70s. In the late 80s, Ed had some ideas about what to do to provide a little bit more performance and actually better fuel economy and lower emissions. In 1987, he formed SLP Engineering. And the whole goal behind SLP Engineering was to provide emissions-legal products that added performance and also had the level of durability that the OE would respect.
When we return, we'll show you how SLP brought back the muscle car on the American Muscle Car. The third-generation Camaro and Firebird were long-awaited technological breakthrough cars. After several years of engines strangled by emissions controls, the new technology of computer-controlled tune-port fuel injection was breathing new life into these power plants.
It really turned the corner when they started using electronic fuel injection. In 1985, GM introduced the tune-port induction engine. That was really a big step forward as far as performance is concerned. They'd finally learned how to balance performance with emissions. As a side benefit, drivability was improved, cold starting was improved. Really, electronic fuel injection and computer controls have transformed the internal combustion engine.
TPI engines were tuned for maximum torque and horsepower at lower RPMs. This made for fun launches and good stoplight to stoplight performance, but they ran out of breath at about 4,500 RPM. A supercar needed an engine that would pull hard to around 6 grand. This is where the SLP engineers started work.
Now SLP stepped in and they said, well, you know, it's a good engine, stoplight to stoplight. You put it on a drag strip, you put it on a road course, and it really struggles up top. What can we do to make the engine perform better all through the rev range? So SLP came out with new runners, came out with exhaust systems, camshaft design, things like that that really made the TPI engine a lot happier throughout the rev range.
Not all of the 305's performance improvements came from the good old days, though. A major part of SLP's tweaking was pure 21st century computer magic. SLP was one of the first companies to analyze their modifications for maximum engine performance in every gear. These new parts, along with a free-flowing 3-inch exhaust system and a new cold air intake system, which improved airflow to the engine as much as 30%, immediately upped the 305's output by 50 horsepower. Best of all, where the stock TPI motors fell off at 4,500, SLP modified engines pulled strongly all the way to the red line. SLP performance packages were available as dealer-installed options on new Firebirds or over-the-counter from GM Service Parts System.
When you can get a relationship with someone like an SLP and you can utilize their engineers and then have our engineers verify the data and share with them what we know about the car, that's when you get some really incredible things done.
With GM's stamp of approval, SLP's parts were politically correct in every sense of the word. They worked with and not against the car's pollution control equipment. They made GM's tuned port engines more efficient. And efficiency means more power. And SLP equipment didn't even void the car's warranty.
For many years in the aftermarket, parts were stamped for off-highway use only, and that was kind of a wink-wink. The person bought the parts and he knew what he was doing, but if the parts broke or if they caused, more importantly, some other parts in the drive line in front of it or behind it to break, you were on your own. And Ed Hemberger, our owner and founder, to his credit, as a business strategy said, our parts are going to be street legal, and they're going to be emissions compliant, and they're going to provide better performance.
SLP had the new smog-legal engines scienced out and was now among the forefront of speed equipment manufacturers. But by the early 90s, America's automakers were back to their old high-performance fun and games. Detroit technology had caught up with the rest of the world, and the new fun machines from General Motors were starting to have that old muscle car feel. Even the #1 litmus test for muscle cars, straight-line acceleration, was coming back. Muscle car fans from the good old days and a whole new crop of high-tech road warriors were taking American iron back to the streets again. For SLP's engineers, these new cars were a great place to start making their kind of horsepower. But once again, SLP had a bigger vision. They wanted to build a car that would offer all-world performance at a reasonable cost. Stay with us as SLP gets radical with a new car called the Firehawk when the American Muscle Car returns.